Hey there, greetings everybody. I want to welcome you here to Prog Monster. My name is Murph. I am the host of this show, a show dedicated to progressive rock and other forms of rock music. So today it's our favorites. We do favorites once a week, usually, well, always on Wednesday. I pick a topic and I give a ranking of something or another, or I give a list of 5 or a list of 10 or a list of 25 on some particular topic. Could be anything. Sometimes it's groups, sometimes it's albums, sometimes it's instruments. It's all kinds of different things. I try to mix it up so that I don't get the same kind of thing going on every week. So last week we did the top 25 favorite heavy metal bands revised, the 2024 edition. So last year I did my first one. I decided that I've been as you know, I've been exploring metal quite a bit more. I did have a metal period in my youth, but I kind of got away from it, and I've been exploring it again, and decided I'd explored it a fair bit enough that the list was a bit different. Did have a few people that weren't too impressed with my rankings, but you know, it is what it is. It's still new to me, so some of these bands that you see low down, you think they got to go higher. Well, in order for them to go higher, I got to listen to them more, and I haven't got around to it. That's part of the issue, right? Anyways, so today we're doing a 5 ranking. So this is not really a ranking either. This is going to be called 5 bands that took a musical change in direction. Now I actually had about 11 bands on this list, but I picked these 5 out. Kind of decided on these 5. They're not in any particular order because we're not really ranking anything. We're just talking about it. So we're just going to start off however I happen to have them stacked here. So in this case, this will be the first one. Aerosmith's Permanent Vacation. Pretty sure this is the album that began that change. Before that, they were kind of a hard rock band, you know, on albums like Toys in the Attic, Rocks, Draw the Line, that kind of stuff. Really heavy stuff. Towards the end of their period, when they were getting like their drug and alcohol addictions were really taking over, a couple of them left the band. Joe Perry, Brad Whitford left the band, and then they both came back, and then the band decided, and I don't know if the band decided or Steven Tyler decided that they were going to be more of a pop band. I think probably a combination of both at that period of time, and so they put out this album, Permanent Vacations. It does have some interesting stuff on it though. Ragdoll I like. Hangman Jury, I like that. A Dude Looks Like a Lady. I don't mind this stuff, but it's very different from the earlier stuff. This is much poppier, much more mainstream. They went on with Pump and Get a Grip to do even more of this stuff, and even started really doing a lot more ballads and stuff, so they became a kind of a mainstream darling, I guess, maybe you might want to call it. So for them, I think that took place on this album. They moved from being a hard rock band to a kind of a pop, mainstream, mainstream kind of pop band, I guess. I don't know what else to say to it. Anyways, some interesting stuff, but very different from their original stuff. I don't listen to their newer stuff as much. I do have surprisingly a fair number of these albums, which surprises me, but I do have them. I do like Aerosmith, especially the early stuff, quite a bit. But here's the album that made the change. So that's the first band. The second band, I don't know really where you want to start with this band. To me, the change actually took place when the lead vocalist changed. So they had a lead vocalist for the first half dozen albums, and he was kind of a front man, kind of a way out there type of guy, and he decided he was going to go solo. So he says, I think maybe they just basically told him to leave because they got tired of his antics, and they brought in another guy who was much more stable and gave them a much more stable mainstream sound. So maybe it took place on this album. There's a little bit of that here for sure. Jump, Panama, Hot for Teachers, maybe a little bit more like their older stuff, but definitely a little bit of a beginning of that pop element here with Jump and Panama. But then David Lee Roth exits the band and is replaced on this album by Michael Anthony. And this album is much more mainstream, much more pop. So they've now taken that whole thing there. Some people would say that they're actually heavier on these albums than they were on the original stuff. I'm not really sure. But clearly there's a different direction here. So you've got this band that's doing all kinds of weird stuff. You know, some skiffle, you know, some folky stuff, some bluesy stuff, all kinds of different stuff, whatever their fancy was at different points, and doing quite a bit of covers. They become a more mainstream kind of hard rock band here. You know, maybe a metal band, maybe a hair metal band, I'm not sure. So there's lots of that little bit of stuff here. I know Mick Jones is on this one. So I don't know if he's on the album. I think he's just part of the production crew. Yeah, he's not on the album. But Sammy Hagar comes in, has a very streamlined voice. Probably a better vocalist than David Lee Roth as far as his voice goes. I prefer David Lee Roth. I like all the antics, and I like the raspiness of his voice and stuff. But on this album, they really took a more mainstream approach, more business approach, I guess. This album, I don't believe there's any covers on here either. And I'm not sure, but did Van Halen do covers during the Hagar era? Maybe they did. I don't recall any. They were much more frontal about that with David Lee Roth, because you knew those songs, they were on the radio, but I don't recall hearing anything cover-wise from these guys. And they probably did do some. I just maybe didn't. I wasn't paying attention to the band enough at this point in time to really say much about whether they did or they didn't. I just know that they became they had a sound that was much more stable and were going forth, and that sound continued starting with this album, whereas on these albums going backwards you get a lot of different stuff. It's really different in some cases. Anyways, so for me, this is the beginning of that change. 5150, I think it is. This is 5150. Yeah, 5150. I can never remember the number. Anyway, so that's the number 2 band today. Third band, of course, is my favorite band. And for me, it started here, but it also ended here, if that makes any sense. So that progressive kind of heavy metal, yeah, I would say there's a little different, definitely some heavy metal going backwards anyways. A lot of progressive stuff, a lot of longer songs, a lot of sweets, and there's still some of that element on this album, but there's also a lot of that synth-pop, policey sound that they went forward doing after this. And I'm not saying this is a bad album. I actually loved this album when it came out. But I recognized after owning it for a while that this was the beginning of perhaps a change in their music. And then they definitely changed when it came to this one. And I hated this album at first, absolutely hated it, because I realized that they were going in that direction, and I hated that direction. But over the years, this album I actually think stands up better than this one. I loved this at the time, but I think this one actually stands up quite a bit better. Body Electric, Red Sector A, Distant Early Warning, The Enemy Within. Some really strong stuff on this album. But it's definitely the beginning of that pop era where they went from being a heavy progressive band to being this synth pop type thing, which didn't please me too much, and many of my Rush friends at the time didn't please them either. But over time, I've changed. They came back online a few years later with some more heavier stuff. Maybe not as progressive as they were, but a lot heavier, and I got back on board then. And I've since gone back and got all of the albums. Some, like Grace, not the Grace Under Pressure, but the next album out, Power Windows. I've just never gone there. I may never go there. I don't like Presto much either, but anyways, that's for me a move to being very different from what they were. The next band, this may be a little bit on the controversial side. I wasn't really into their earlier stuff, and they didn't have much earlier stuff. I think this is their third LP. It's either their third or their fourth album. I can't remember. But anyways, their first 3 albums got that more of that 60s sound, kind of poppy sound, a little bit bluesy, kind of stuff like that. And then they went to this, which is much heavier. Such a heavy album, so good. Lots of hard rock here. This was the change. This is when they became the purple that I know. It goes with my Pooh Bear purple hat. Not my purple hat, my purple sweater. Yeah, so yeah, definitely this is when they became deep purple as opposed to kind of purple light. Yeah, really good album. And going forward, they produced a lot of really good, solid albums, but I think it started here, and I think it's done best here too, to be honest. Really good album. Okay, and the last band for this 5 band that went from one type of music and changed to something completely different is Styx. Yes, and it started with this album. So the predecessors to this have a lot of really hard rock stuff, tinging on metal at some points. Definitely a lot of progressive stuff in there. Some almost folky progressive stuff as well. Yeah, even some power pop. But once this album came out, and this was almost a dramatic change because of the album before this, Pieces of 8, is quite heavy with lots of progressive stuff. So they were doing that stuff right up till Pieces of 8, and then overnight they changed to this. Now this isn't 100% change though. It does have, it's very poppy in nature, toned down a lot. But there is some folky elements to some of the songs like Boat on the River. And then you get a little bit some songs like Eddie and Borrowed Time, which have a little bit of heaviness to them. I wouldn't go and call them heavy rock or any hard rock or anything. But primarily this was a pop album, and it started tinging on some of those power ballads like you get with Babe, Lights, Love After Midnight, really good song, but still very kind of poppy. Never Say Never, very poppy, like lots of pop stuff. So it started here. Next album, it really took off with Paradise Theater, and then got ridiculous with, I don't even want to talk about the album, so I'm not gonna. So anyways, and then, for a long time, they were kind of in that mode. But they did come back in the turn of the century. Their last couple of albums have been really good, especially their last album, which I think really had that progressive element back. Songs are a little bit short, still keeping with that poppy sound, but definitely a lot harder, a lot more progressive sounds to them. Really good stuff, actually. But anyways, their poppy era started here with Cornerstone. I do like this album. I've made no bones about that. I do like it. But it was the beginning of what would lead to a disaster, if you ask me. Okay, so there you have it. Those are the 5 albums with a change of direction, or the five bands I chose. I had 6 other ones I could have done. I may do a second episode. Depends on what comes out of this. If I'm getting hammered over the head with it, maybe I won't bother. Who knows? Styx, one of the bands. Deep Purple, another one. Rush, more Rush. Van Halen, and to me this is the Van Halen that started it, really. And then you got Aerosmith as well at the bottom. So I don't dislike, and the funny part is in the case of Deep Purple, I actually like it better than I did their previous stuff, because they moved into a music that I like. In the case of Aerosmith, Van Halen, Rush, Styx, I actually love the earlier stuff. I don't hate any of the stuff that came out after. I don't really listen to Van Halen, so I can't really say too much about it. I don't totally love the Aerosmith stuff, but I don't completely hate it either. I'm kind of ambiguous to it, I guess. The Rush stuff, I absolutely hate it when it came out. I've grown to like it quite a bit more. Rush is my favorite band, so they get a little bit more leeway than a lot of other bands would. And then, of course, Styx. I hated that stuff. Not all of it, and not all of the stuff on all of their albums that went that way, but enough that I got out of them, That's the big thing. All these bands, with the exception of Deep Purple, who went and became more like what I like, I got out of those other 4 bands for a while. Some of them, like Styx and Rush, have kind of come back to their sound. Aerosmith, Van Halen, not so much. Van Halen would be tough to come back because Eddie's gone now. But yeah, but I don't hate any of the stuff. There's none of that here. There's no hate here. Even the Rush stuff, which I don't really listen to, I don't really hate it. I just prefer their older stuff and some of their more recent stuff as well. So there you have it. There's my episode for this week. Favorites, 5 bands that changed their music style. I hope you enjoyed kind of a slow rendition of this, and we will see you. Don't forget to subscribe and hit the like button. You know, any comments you have, put them down. Be kind, I'm old. And hit the notification bell, and we'll see you next week for another favorites. It'll be I think it's going to be a 2-parter next week. Ben has given me an idea that he would like me to see me do, so it's going to take a bit of work to do it. So I'll either start it next week, or I'll wait and start it the week after, because next week is going to be an episode of metal, and that takes a lot of time. So I may start it the week after, but definitely going to be coming 25. I'm going to do my 50 favorite progressive rock songs of all time, and I'll do them in 2 parts, part A and part B. Anyways, hope to see you then. Take care and have a good day. Bye.